Kevin Durant does not deserve to be in the GOAT status conversation. Now, before all the Kevin Durant fans get on me, he should actually be in the GOAT status conversation. Now, I know that sounds confusing. So what do I mean by this? Kevin Durant, as a skill, as a player, right? The amount of talent that he has, the amount of talent that he puts out on a day-to-day basis on a consistent level whenever he's on the court shows you that there's not many people that you should be putting above him. Matter of fact, I'll even say myself that he is better than a lot of the other GOAT. Matter of fact, I'll even say it myself that he is better than a lot of the GOATs that you have on your GOAT status conversation. I don't want to hear about Larry Bird. I don't want to hear about Magic Johnson being better than Kevin Durant. There's not many players from back in the day that is actually better than the caliber of players that we have today. There's only a few that can actually stand the test of time, in my opinion. But there's not many, even within the GOAT status conversation, that can stand the test of time, at least numbers-wise, to what Kevin Durant is doing. He's in his 17th season, and the amount of consistent scoring that he has put down, the clutch moments that he has, is nothing short but amazing. And he should, theoretically, be in the GOAT status conversation. But there is one thing that always holds him back from being in the GOAT status conversation. It is not because he is a pariah and all that good stuff that people like to talk about, that he doesn't have the mentality and this and that. It's nothing of that. It purely comes down to rings. Now, I usually hate to have conversations like this because it's not well nuanced. But for a person like Kevin Durant, this is probably the only thing that really differentiates himself from all the other GOAT status nominees. Now, when a lot of people use rings, they use it in a very deductive manner because it really is, right? You're basically summing up a person's whole career to whether or not they won a championship, which is not a good barometer for success. However, when you do have the stats that Kevin Durant has and you're comparing him to amongst the GOATs, it doesn't really make sense why he should not be in that conversation, until you talk about the rings, the lack thereof, and also the context behind the rings. Not all rings are weighed the same. Some rings are weighed heavier than others. Some rings are weighed lighter than others. That is just the pure fact of the case. When you have a team like the Bucks, who went all the way to the championship and won against all odds, and yes, listen, they probably should not have won that if Kevin Durant's shoe size was a little bit smaller, or if Kyrie Irving didn't get hurt, or if James Harden wasn't hurt. But at the end of the day, they went through all the trials and tribulations, and they went all the way to the finals. And they won against a really good Phoenix Suns team at the time. That ring means a lot more than the rings that Kevin Durant has joining the Golden State Warriors. Now, I know this is something that not a lot of Kevin Durant fans like to hear, but this is something that is just the plain fact of things, right? Because the teams are not built the same. The teams are not built evenly. And so if teams are not built evenly, rings are not weighed evenly. So, for example, Kevin Durant joined, and listen, you can be upset that the fact that he joined and he left OKC. It's fine that he left OKC. There's no ifs and buts about it. OKC was not going to win with the way that it was presently constructed. And so I understand leaving OKC to get a different view and different perspective on the league, different way of playing the offense. 1,000% I understand. Did he do it the best way, leaving Russ in the dust? No, but hey, listen, it happens. The issue comes to be the team that you actually end up joining, because that team, depending on how good that team is, can give you either more props for winning a ring or less. And in Kevin Durant's case, it was less, because not only did he join the Golden State Warriors, he joined the greatest regular season team of all time, with Stephen Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, in his prime, and also Klay Thompson, and also Draymond Green, a stacked Warriors team who went to the finals twice before he did. A team that is tried and tested to go all the way to the playoffs and be a championship contender team without him. So when he joined the team, it did not make the team worse at all. The only person that they got rid of was Harrison Barnes. And listen, if you're going to get rid of Harrison Barnes to get Kevin Durant, I will make that trade 1,000 times over. It just makes more sense. There's no reason why you should keep them. But that is why those rings are a little bit tough for a lot of other people who aren't Kevin Durant fans to really give him a lot of props on. And even Kevin Durant still struggles with this to this day. Because if you follow Kevin Durant on Twitter, he talks about this, right? And it's almost as if it's an insecurity because he doesn't really understand why people aren't weighing the rings that he won in Golden State the same as anybody else's. And it's understandable for Kevin Durant to feel that way, because winning a championship ring, no matter if it's weighed heavier or lighter than others, is a Herculean effort. It takes a lot to win rings. And I'm not trying to downgrade, which effectively I am actually, but I'm not trying to say that the rings he won was insignificant. I'm just saying in context of other rings that has been won and the quantity of them, that Kevin Durant has not won enough for me to even put him in the GOAT status conversation. Now, here's another thing that is a mark against him. The fact that he has not won a ring before or after joining Golden State. If he won that ring against Miami, people would give him immense respect because that was a crazy task. You're going against the Heatles. It's a tough task for you to do. If you won a ring, even in Brooklyn, where Brooklyn has, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, is still a stacked team. But at least you can say, hey, I won the ring and I won it driving my own bus, driving my own ship, steering the team to success, right? And not just, being on a team that is so uberly talented, which it was. But the team was very top heavy in the sense that you only had Kyrie Irving and James Harden, and then everybody else is kind of like, okay, they're good, but are they good enough to get you there? The Warriors just had a simply stacked team that didn't have to sacrifice much in order to get Kevin Durant. And so to continue on, you even have Phoenix, where he's had multiple opportunities to get to that level. And with the same extremely talented teams, he stacked the deck. Okay? That's something that we have to live with. He stacks the deck. But at the end of the day, even with the decks being stacked for him, he still does not edge it out. And he's playing defense. He's playing offense. It's not like it's football where, a quarterback can only control the offense. He can't control the defense. Kevin Durant is a factor on both ends of the court. Now, we can say, maybe coaching has something to do with it. There were some errors on the coaching side, maybe something like that of the sort that can definitely impact him winning a championship. And that is all true. However, the reality is you are Kevin freaking Durant. And you have, let's say in Phoenix, Devin Booker and Chris Paul. But now you have Bradley Beal, right? This is a championship or bust year. And right now, even though they are playing better, they have won their last 6 games, and that is really a good sign to see, especially if you're a Kevin Durant fan, especially if you're a Phoenix Sun fan, because they started out a little bit rocky. But not winning a championship after joining Golden State is something that is used heavily against them. And so for anybody to continue to give the nod towards Kevin Durant to be in the GOAT status conversation, he needs to win it with him being the forefront, with him having, listen, he still has an immense amount of help. And that's the thing. That's a problem with the way that teams are constructing around him. It's not like he's getting on a bunch of teams that is filled to the brim with great role players. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's always them, the role players that are on the team have to play above their skill level, or a lot of the offensive production comes down to talent because they have, let's say, a Kyrie Irving and a James Harden or a Devin Booker, Chris Paul. You're simply surviving off the talent of your top producers and not necessarily the talent of your team. But this is the way that Kevin Durant kind of wants to go through. And I'm not going to be naive like many other Kevin Durant fans that believe that he's not, in control or at least have some sway or some type of influence in terms of the players that they get on their team. Because if you are that caliber of player, they are obviously thinking about you. And even if you're saying, hey, no, like I'm not doing anything or talking to the front office, your impact and your presence on the court greatly impacts the type of team that you're going to have. And with the way that Kevin Durant has kind of moved from Brooklyn all the way to Phoenix, it's kind of been the same story. And so it's hard for me to believe that Kevin Durant's not having some sort of a say-so on the stars that they're getting on the teams that he is going on. And so that all comes back to this point. Can Kevin Durant win without being on the greatest regular season team of all time? He still stacks the deck on being, on great teams with great players and all that stuff. And that's something that you will want. And to a certain degree, people will still undermine his success even if he wins a ring with Phoenix because of how stacked the deck is. But even still, listen, like I said, all rings are not weighed the same. But I will say, even if he wins a ring with Phoenix, that it will be weighed heavier. And in my opinion, when I say heavier, I mean that it has more importance, it has more impact. Right, the ring means a lot more than the rings that he won in Golden State. That's just the reality of things. And even though people will look at that and say, hey, listen, Kevin Durant still had a lot of help on his team, it is still going to only further his case to be in the GOAT status. Because if you're looking skill-wise, there's nothing that a lot of these players in the GOAT status can do anything against that. Like, Kevin Durant is a legitimate GOAT status player. I don't want to hear about Larry Bird ever again. I don't want to hear about Magic Johnson. I know I'm picking on those two, but those are the only two that's coming up to mind. But there's a lot of, like, even Wilt. Wilt was really good for his time. Matter of fact, if you were to put LeBron James or anybody else back in Wilt's time, I think they would put up similar numbers because, my goodness, what was Wilt doing to those poor guys? But in terms of skill level and ability, there's not many players that are better than Kevin Durant offensively. And he's still good defensively because of his length, because of his willingness to play defense. He is still a great player. This is not anything to go against Kevin Durant as a player, and I want this to be known. This is to go against the fact that even with all the abilities that he has, because he won the rings in the way that he did, it is going to use it against him, right? Before LeBron James could be in the GOAT status, he had to win a couple rings. But he had to win a couple rings in a different way, right? He went from leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers to being on the Heat to kind of form his own super team to win those rings. And then after he won those rings, he had to come back to Cleveland and win the ring there, which is probably the most impactful ring that he's ever won in his career. And then he left that team to win a ring in Los Angeles. That only furthers LeBron James' story and his case to be in the GOAT status case. If LeBron James only won 2 championships at this point of his career, nobody would consider LeBron James to be in the GOAT status outside of the fact that he's an extremely talented player. And that is something that Kevin Durant has to get used to. Because Kevin Durant is an extremely talented player, and he should be in the GOAT status conversation. But he does not deserve it.